Welcome to the Gnarly Girls podcast.
What's up, gnarly beings?
This is a loose-lipped, unfiltered, raw-dogging, stripping down of culture.
No fucks, no panties. This is a labia of love.
We're your hosts, Tony Naj
and Serafina Supernova, and this is Gnarly Girls.
What's up, Sarah?
What's up, Tony?
All right, today we're talking about grape culture within the stories of the Bible.
Yes, the Bible is grape culture, and the doubt and denial of magic is grape culture.
And also, I would think the rewriting of women's narratives as if women can only fit into the role of mother and whore, which is represented with our girls, Mary Magdalene and the Virgin Mary. Also, what a joke it is to always refer to this bitch as the Virgin Mary. I mean, what if this is the slut Sarah, this is the promiscuous Tony, and this is the Virgin Mary. I just feel like I've never met a guy that's defined by his body count. We should all have to reference our body count when we introduce ourselves. Tony Naj, 38.
I like the slut, Sarah. I feel like you would be the tantalizing Tony.
I know, even though my body count truly is exponentially larger than yours.
Yeah, I mean, I've sucked a lot of dick, but I haven't had a lot of penis in my vaginal canal. Let's start out with a Bible verse, shall we?
Shall we? Thank you.
Okay.
Because you are the ordained pastor, so you shall.
Look at my clergy. I just came in the mail. I literally am now an officiant. So if anyone wants to hire me to officiate your marriage, you just let me know and we'll talk about pricing. Okay. So I just want to say I have the Bible verse written out here in my journal, but this is my Bible. All right. From when I used to go to church, not only every Sunday, but also Bible study on Wednesday. And hey, why not a Bible study church dinner on a Sunday night? The programming was deep. I got this when I was dating an evangelical Christian whose mother thought that I was a bad influence on him and I was going to turn him into a damned man because she thought that I wore shorts that were too short and my tits were hanging out all the time, which I did wear short shorts and my tits were hanging out. But her perception of that being a problem was the problem. But there was many moments in my life where I poured over this thing and oh, look, there's even a little pamphlet from the church that I went to in here. Yeah, I did the water baptism. I got dunked. I did it in front of the whole congregation. You go get baptized as an adult. And that's the difference of the evangelical Christian church from the Catholic church. The Catholics are a little more chill. They're just like, you're a baby, wear a dress, get the priest's little holy water on you. Evangelical Christians are like, as an adult, you will proclaim Jesus Christ as your one and only savior in front of a room of people, and you will get dunked in a thing of water on a Sunday morning inside of church. So,
well, that makes sense because I was raised Catholic and you have something called confirmation that's supposed to happen as a teenager.
mm-hmm.
And during your confirmation, that is something that you're expected to consent to.
Yeah.
And I actually did not consent to confirmation. So that was its own, journey. But I do think that having a teenager having to consent is even different than having an adult because usually a teenager will just go along with, am I saying the right word? What is the word? What I used to use the word.
Baptism, confirmation?
Confirmation, yeah. I was like, consent was in my head. I was like, what am I consenting to? My brother was confirmed because I don't think he thought about it. He was just told to do it.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, when I came of age, I was like, I'm not doing that.
Yeah. I mean, confirmation is like the cotillion of the church.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting, cotillion and confirmation also kind of happen around the same time in high school. It's like a whole thing in the Christian South. You go to cotillion, you become a woman, you get confirmed, Jesus becomes your husband, someone gifts you, the bride wore white, and then you're not supposed to fuck anyone until you marry them. And what if they have a micro penis? I don't know, maybe you're into micro penis. I've said it before on the Gnarly Girls podcast. I will say it again. One time I saw this really hot micro penis porn of two ballerina dancers together, and I was like, wow, that micro penis is hot. So no judgment on the micro penis. Let's get into the scripture, okay?
Okay.
All right. So this is a direct quote from the NIV, the New International Version of the Bible, which is what the King James Bible became. And it's usually what evangelical Christians use, who are pretty much the ones who are trying to take over the world. Um, all right. A woman should learn in quietness and full submission. I do not permit a woman to teach or have authority over a man. She must be silent. First Timothy 2:11 through 2:12. Tony, what do you think about this?
I mean, I think that it's interesting to me that the King James Bible was obviously something that was edited and resurrected by someone within the state, right? So to think that a state leader was interfering with a religious text out of like the purity of his spiritual gifts, to me is absurd. Like to think that there isn't a state agenda that's deeply embedded within the King James Bible is a strange assumption because in and of its his truly King James Bible, like it's in the title that the state is intimately involved. And so when we look at patriarchy, we look at the state and we look at the influence of women, I think right now in this here moment that the influence of women, and not because I'm like of this belief that women are superior to men, because genuinely do not believe that, but I do think that the influence of women would be more anti-war. The influence of women would be more anti-violence. It would be inherently around the protection of children and women because that's self-preservation. That's just from like a biological evolutionary standpoint. I think that women are aware of the necessity of protecting women and children, both selfishly and from experience. Therefore, if women's opinions were respected, of course, there would be some warmongering women. Hello, Hillary Clinton. We see you. I see you. There's plenty Margaret Thatchers out there in the world that are able to be part of the patriarchal idea of like domination through war and violence. But I think that there would have been a lot more dissent if women's voices were heard around war. And, you know, when I think back to ancient Greece, when I think back to the dawn, quote unquote, of democracy, where women were invited into the mass manipulation of the plays and of the theater to get people excited about war. So I'm not claiming that women can't get excited about war, but I do think if their opinions were taken seriously, I think the conversation about war culture would be deeper.
Yes. I also feel like women are attuned more so in their feminine frequency to the distribution, the equitable distribution of resources within an ecosystem. And that also feels like it's a threat to a system built on literally starving people. Like, I haven't woken up a single day, I feel like, in years now. How long has it been? It's almost been 2 years. Has it been a year? Uh,
Two,
what?
two.
2 years without thinking of the amount of people that are literally starving. Like actually start, like to die and to suffer of starvation feels so representative of the extraction of the mother, of the goddess. Like the goddess and the mother are abundant. The feminine frequency is that of the earth. Like it is plants, it is kale everywhere. It is kale salad on kale salad all day, which I've been making a lot of massage kale salad recently. And I've seen that kale in your garden. I feel like I got to get there and make some massage kale salad and feed the village. Like that is the impulse of the feminine in my experience. I also think when we're gaslit out of our magic, and we're told to be quiet, there's like there's a lack of self-orientation and higher self-awareness where then I think women especially who get excited about war, who get excited about genocide, who get excited about Trump, who get excited about controlling people, they are the most removed from their magic. I have not met a single like woman who is invested in war and genocide and likes Donald Trump and like identifies as a Republican or like has like very strong political feelings that have to do with controlling people and the way they live their lives, who is deeply inherently connected to her magic. Because when you're focused on your own magic and you really recognize that and you recognize your sovereignty, you recognize that everyone else also has that inside of them. So then you fundamentally don't want to control them because you want to express your magic and your freedom and you want other people to as well. Their freedom is not a threat to you because you're not underexpressed.
I'm going to say 2 points that are going to contradict each other or conflict with each other.
Love.
One, there is a concept of called women's world banking, or basically it's like microfinance loans that are specifically targeted towards women as an economic system, as an actual financial strategy. So with women's world banking, the economic pitch is that when you give women in quote unquote developing nations, I think that's like an incredibly like pejorative white supremacist word, developing nation. But when you give money to women in developing nations, they're called micro loans. So like a small loan, these aren't big loans, but they're consolidated loans. So you would give like a bunch of small loans to women in quote unquote developing nations. That is a very good financial investment for the banking community because not only are these women reliable, but also they will give back to the community. Their businesses are structured in community development. So then the micro loans are also like benefiting the community, which means that that community is a more stable place to continue loaning money to. Obviously, I've gone on and on and on with my issues about capitalism, but I'm just saying, like, from a capitalist perspective, microloans towards women is an investment strategy that Wall Street has gotten behind, that major nonprofits have gotten behind, because it's actually like a pretty big industry. However, I'm also going to say in the same breath that women are the ones who are most effective in trafficking women, who are the ones that are going around being like we see it was just and any other, well, like this happens constantly where women are the ones that are like, hey, come over here, and then like oopsie doopsie, you're sex trafficked. So I think that like where I'm like my confusion with the or not confusion, my reticence in any assumption of gender is the complexity of patriarchy and how women are actively participating in patriarchy, in grape culture, and in the support of the King James Bible, in the support of their own oppression and the oppression of other women. So it's like when you say women are taken from their, or the women that are not expressing their magic, yes, I agree. And I would say it's any gender that isn't expressing the magic that is rooted in an archetype of a feminine, even though we are recognizing that gender is a construct, femininity is a construct, and it's all just socialization and programming.
Yes. Well, if the cultural meditation has been the Holy Father, God the Father, God the Father, and we've been oriented so often towards this divine masculine, then the feminine creature was just this human woman who had this immaculate conception. But there's no mention in the Bible really of the divinity of women. I mean, I just looked up when did the Council of Nicaea happen? A council of Christian bishops um, who convened in Nicaea, instructed by the Roman Empire Constantine to essentially like take out women's scriptures and stories from the Bible to remove the magic of women, to remove the divine feminine from these scriptures that then would be used for the state. If there has been this imbalance and this like mass consciousness meditation on the divine father and the divine masculine, then it only makes sense at this time that everyone, regardless of gender, would need to be in a meditation around the divine feminine and like who is the divine mother and what is the goddess, and not even like coming to a conclusion and being like this is exactly what it is, but to even just be thinking about it, to even just be
Mhm.
orienting our consciousness towards it where we are curious and then can have compassion for why it's been removed. And I really actually can't fuck around with men who aren't meditating on the divine feminine. I just, unless there's money or a podcast involved that we're doing later today with some Republican men, like I'm not going to do it for pleasure. I'm only going to do it for art and business.
So I want to get into the archetypes of Mary, the Marys, the double Marys. I think even just having them have the same name is like an interesting
Yeah.
cultural examination of the two sides of woman, right? So you have Mary as an entity, and then you have Mary Magdalene, the whore, and the Virgin, who's obviously pure. And I know you have a monologue in our show, Grape Culture, coming to Boston and Philadelphia this fall, and Seattle, and hopefully Portland, Oregon. So go on the website for tickets. But I would like for you to tell us a little bit about the misrepresentation of these two Marys, because it is your monologue in in the show.
Hmm, a pleasure. Yes,
Where you are, whom are you referencing for this knowledge in case people want to do their own research?
let me do that first. So, a couple of books I recommend. The Sophia Code by Kaya Ra, The Great Cosmic Mother, incredibly like academic, but like spiritual, magical oriented book that was actually used in the women's studies department at Cornell for many years. So, if you're looking for a little more academic, The Great Cosmic Mother. If you're looking for more of like an activation and like spiritual teachings around Mary Magdalene and the divine feminine, and you want to like scramble up and reorient your whole fucking consciousness and atomic structure, the Sophia Code. If you're looking for a person who writes about this topic like forever and ever and ever, and also has parents who do the same, Sophie Strand, The Madonna Secret, just listen to it on Spotify. Like you don't even need to read it. Like Sophie,
Spotify supports genocide, so
I know,
listen to
I'm
it.
sorry, but I love Sophie Strand and it's on there. So whatever, don't listen to it. Buy the book. That's actually probably better
Buy
for
the fucking book on Bookshop. Don't buy it on Amazon, by the way. Bookshop.org is where you should be buying your books.
Thank you, Tom.
Please, bookshop.org, sponsor this podcast.
Is more of a we actually should that is actually we need to start doing that. That's the next thing we need to do. So Sophie Strand, The Madonna Secret, her parents wrote a book, Perdita Finn, and her daddy, whose name I'm forgetting in this moment, called The Way of the Rose. Maybe I will, because I meant to actually drop resources last week in the Discord. I'm just going to write myself a note that I'm going to drop all of these resources in the Discord. So if you want to like do further reading, if you're like jamming on what we're talking about in this new season 2 Grape Culture series, go subscribe to the Patreon. I'll put it like at the lowest tier so you can subscribe and get the resources and they'll be on the Discord. Who else do I want to call on? If there's other
That's
books.
enough. That's enough. Now say
Okay,
the
I'm sorry. I'm
information.
sorry. I am such a nerd for this shit, and I'm like an academic nerdy nerd in general for feminist theory. So it's actually episode 19, which is so interesting because this is how Mary Magdalene works. She's such a fucking high priestess. All of her teachings were about accessing the higher self within the human body and quite literally not identifying as the human or the angel, but identifying as the bridge between these consciousnesses within us, which you can see would be very threatening to a state that is controlling people by saying they have to go to this external priest or pastor who's a man to connect to the divine father who is separate from them. And they are the little peasant children at the altar being like, please forgive me of my sins. I was born a sinner, sir. Please just bless me with your holy water. Come all over my spirit and face so I can be clean again. Mary Magdalene's teachings were like, no, dude, like the temple, the church is actually within you. You are the altar. So that's who she was. She was
Hold on.
wife.
Also, remember that Mary Magdalene was a contemporary of Jesus. She
Yeah.
was of equal footing. She wasn't below him. I think that is something that must be remembered, is that their teachings were in tandem.
No, she was his wife. I mean, this is like up for debate, theologically, historically, whatever. I believe, based on all of my nerdy research and like for context, I literally started putting my Polly Pockets in my family manger at 5 years old, being like, this is Mary Magdalene. Like, I had a weird, just deep obsession with this figure since I was a kid. I also read in the Bible that she was like a dancer, and I was like, oh, me too. So like that was there on the human level, but I think there was like this divine impulse to just be about this bitch. So I believe that Mary Magdalene was Jesus's wife. Her Hebrew name is actually Miriam, which Sophie Strand talks about in The Madonna Secret. And she had a sister, she had a brother. There's like a whole like story about her siblings. And then she was Jesus's wife, and they had a daughter, not to brag, named Sarah. Of course, they would have a daughter with the name Sarah. That means princess, okay? And so I didn't find that out until like 5 years ago or something. So when I found that out, I was like, please imagine me like a cartoon character finding out that Jesus, Yeshua, and Miriam's daughter was named Sarah. I was like, I think I just like came on a spiritual level through my whole body. Because I feel like, I've met many Sarahs too throughout my life who are obsessed with Mary Magdalene. I'm like, all right, we're all part of like a frequency signature here. So Mary Magdalene, Miriam was Yeshua's wife. And it's also said that Mother Mary introduced them and knew that because you have to imagine Mary Magdalene wasn't some like whore prostitute on the street. I mean, I don't know what her sexual life was. Maybe she was a little whorish in the bedroom, to each their own. But she came from a wealthy family. And her parents were actually incredibly protective of her. And she was studying in the mystery school. So her parents were part of mystical Judaism. They studied the Kabbalah, and they were saturated in these teachings that were also coming out of ancient Egypt. So she was studying in the lineage of Isis. She was studying in the lineage of Hathor, who was said to be Isis's teacher. So she was like imprinted with these magic with a K, these magical codes. Then
Wait,
some,
I'm gonna put you on pause for a
yeah,
second. Okay, so we don't get lost in the sauce. I also think when we're talking about white supremacy, that so often knowledge begins in the cradle of whiteness, right? Like democracy begins in the cradle of the Greeks. Like this religious texture begins in the cradle of a white Jesus, which is absurd because this was all in Palestine. However, we must remember that a lot of these teachings came from Egypt.
yes.
And a lot of the teachings that the Greeks were fucking with also came from Egypt, came from Iran, came from these other places, came from India. So there was a lot of cross-cultural reference that was not white, that was influencing these thinkers that has now been whitewashed within our historical context. So just a reminder that Mary Magdalene, who was a high priestess of the occult, her teachings were coming from Egypt.
Yes. Also, another resource, Mary Magdalene Revealed by Megan Watterson. She went to Harvard Divinity School and is quite literally a divine feminine feminist theologian. And she has a lot of amazing work as well. And she thinks about this a lot. And like, I just want to say from the frame of whiteness, I'm also a white woman talking about this. So there's no way to extract my own whiteness from what I'm saying. I want to like fully acknowledge I'm a white woman being like, Mary Magdalene, this is what I've learned about children. So like I acknowledge that. Like I would rather a brown person actually be sitting here talking about this instead of me, but here we are.
But there are plenty of them. I mean, there's plenty of
Oh,
people
I know,
talking
but
about
you
this
know what I
besides
mean. You
us.
know what I mean. I just want to say, like, if a black or a brown person was standing here and like they loved Mary Magdalene and wanted to talk about it, the quickness with which I would pass the mic, because that's also my orientation is like enough white women talking about Mary Magdalene. And also please talk about her more because we haven't talked about her enough. So there I am contradicting myself. Okay. So Mother Mary introduces Yeshua and Mary Magdalene. I don't know, they fuck, they fall in love, whatever. They start teaching together. So they are teaching together in Palestine. And it is said that this is where this is where the divine masculine has to get and understand. This is where all men need to get in order for me to respect you. Yeshua would use his trainings as a Reiki fucking master of light to protect Mary Magdalene while she was giving her transmissions and her healings to thousands of people who would be sitting and listening. She also had, it was said, this inheritance from her family. So she was using this inheritance to then be able to have the resources to gather these people and bring them in for the transmission. So I want you to imagine Yeshua casting a circle of light around Mary Magdalene in the whole space and the divine masculine being the riverbed to hold the container. And then Mary Magdalene is actually the one giving the teachings. I'm not saying Jesus didn't turn water into wine and walk on water. Like, I don't think I have the authority to say what did and didn't happen and what he did and didn't do, other than the fact that I know with everything in me from all of my teachers, I have just heard this again and again. I've read it again and again, that he was using his Reiki master powers to protect her so she could do her magic.
What I think the important part of that is that there was a partnership, and in that partnership there was not competition. And when we're talking about genuine like spiritual downloads and spiritual sharings, and this isn't about ego. This isn't about guru. This isn't about like, well, me, what I think. No, my transmission. No, my transmission. This is about like genuine support and partnership and community and camaraderie. And him not being like, well, I want to be the one to talk right now, Mary. No. And I think that is the thing that people, I think, get lost in when it comes to spiritual teachings because there is so much ego of someone being like, well, it's about me.
Yeah.
And that's how we have all this like kind of cult mentality that ends up happening within spiritual circles is that it's actually about the person and it becomes cult-like because that person cannot extract themselves or can't extract their ego of wanting to be part of the worship.
Yeah.
They want to be worshiped along with the message versus like, oh, hey, here's a message. You can worship the message, but I'm not here to be worshiped. No human is should be worshiped. The
Yeah.
human is just like a conduit of conversation.
Yeah, maybe a little self-worship, maybe a little self-devotion in reaction to patriarchy and how patriarchy has made us hate ourselves. So, like, indirect opposition to that. But certainly, like, Mary Magdalene is giving like channel, vessel, oracle. Like she is focused on like what is coming through so she can offer. Like that feels very divine feminine. Like I'm going to be the vessel for this transmission to then give it. So also Palestine was in a state that it is in right now. So like imagine that too. Like she could have been raped and killed any fucking second, especially at that time. I mean, and right now. It's just like so crazy and wild how it hasn't changed, but it makes so much sense when we also see what's happening in the United States. And I mean, we all know, we talk about this all the time. But what is happening in Palestine now was happening then. So Yeshua was also aware that she could be killed for doing this work and that she was powerful. So he was going to use his power to protect her. Now, that's not a romance story that brings you to your knees. I don't fucking know. Wake up your heart because that shit is beautiful. So they're doing these healings together. Then Mother Mary, okay, her story about oh, Archangel Gabriel comes to her and is just like, you're going to have a Christed being. Sky Daddy is going to impregnate you. And then everyone's going to call you a slut and tell you that you're a liar because you didn't fuck your husband to have this baby. You fucked God and they're not going to believe you. I really do kind of fuck with like her self-concept and identity and like projection and perception from that angle of the story being tested and how she really would have to like walk a path of faith and courage to have people like throwing tomatoes at her and being like, you slut, you whore. There's no way God could have gotten you pregnant. You didn't fuck your husband. You must have fucked some other man, you fucking slut. Like, I do like thinking of Mary as this woman, like having to like move through that and what that would
But was she a woman or was she a child? Because I've also heard that
right.
she was like 12.
13. Yeah, me too. Exactly. So my based on my research, I think what is happening is that there's a misinterpretation. I think she was practicing high occult magic. She's practicing sex magic. And what my teachers have offered to me is that there was like very literal light weaving happening. Like, yeah, maybe she fucked Joseph, maybe she fucked another man. Who fucking cares who she fucked? She's the vessel. So she fucked some man, and in the fucking of the man, let's say it was Joseph, she's practicing sex magic because she's trained in the occult. So yeah, you can just fuck. You can just fuck and you can get pregnant. Or you can like create a container and you can have sex with light and visuals and breath and like invite the sacred into the space. And like, I don't know, maybe you do weave a Christed being. Like, I also don't feel like that's my place to say. I mean, obviously, Yeshua had some shit going on with him that we're still talking about him to
So
this.
let's pause you again. I think what the point is that there is this idea of intentional intuition and that she wasn't just a random vessel that was like chosen to be the mother of a Christ being, but she actually was calling it in herself and she had agency and she was using her spiritual practice, her magic to bring this being into existence. And whether it came from human sperm, light sperm, God sperm is irrelevant because the person who spewed from her loins was in Christ consciousness and that she did not just randomly birth a Christ consciousness, but she was actually and actively participating in the creation of that consciousness.
Seeing the virgin and the whore, the virgin as Mother Mary, the whore as Mary Magdalene, in their light as high priestesses is the point.
Yes. Yeah, that and the other point is that to take their stories and to demean their stories and to reduce them into these two archetypes that have been so successfully indoctrinated into our psychology, that that is the only two archetypes of which we see woman.
Yes.
And we are still struggling with that duality. We are still struggling with that complexity. We still cannot understand how can someone be a mother and a whore.
We are mother, we are whore, we are princess, we are queen. Recently, I've been thinking about the way that the princess gets a bad rap, and it's like, oh, move out of your maiden phase, move out of your princess phase, and move into the mother phase, and move into the queen phase. And it's like, but wait, why are y'all talking shit about the princess? Because last time I checked, the a queen who's not like honoring her like slut princess, like needy self who like needs all the things is actually bypassing her body and like probably judging other women for like saying what they need and just being a cunt, you know? So
Well,
like
a princess
not being a whore.
is a part of the evolution of the consciousness. I mean, it's just like one must age. You don't just like have a strawberry seed and then it's a strawberry. That's not how it's not how evolution works. There are steps. And I do think I've definitely felt a shift between like a more maiden princess energy and one that is less that. That is, and that, but you can't bypass one's evolution. One must go through each steps of your evolution in order to be an embodied person.
Yeah. And like I'm sure, I mean, I've definitely met women who like are identifying as queens, but they skipped the part where they like reclaim the princess and the priestess and the whore and the maiden. And now they're walking around as these women judging women younger than them who are trying to explore this thing that patriarchy has made damned and sinful and taken and judged. Also, the amount of women who are concerned with coming off narcissistic who are actually incredibly codependent. And like narcissists aren't thinking about whether or not they're being narcissistic. So that's just like another thing I want to drop on the altar because I think like the lack of self-devotion and like interest in self and like this true self-intimacy that's not narcissistic. It's actually like so sacred and holy. Like the ability to hold yourself lets you actually hold other people. The self interest and the self intimacy of that lets you actually, into me, I see, Esther Perel, I think that came from her, lets you actually see into other people and then show up as that compassionate witness. So that feels kind of beefy. I don't know. What do we think? Do we want to talk about anything else?
I think the thing that I want to say is just like any story, that we've been culturally deep throating for thousands of years is programmed. It is intentional. There is an agenda behind it. And I think that as citizens of the earth, it is our civic duty to figure out what was the agenda of these stories and perhaps what is an alternative narrative that is worth investigating, discussing, researching, and developing. Because if we're just going to take everything as is, then that is part of the program, that is part of the conditioning. And I think the process of questioning, the process of getting alternative narratives is what education is.
Yeah.
And even though our schools are not going to be like, oh, well, why don't you research seven different versions of the same idea? That is what an adult education can and should be. And that is reflected in both the like in religious texts and the media and news and everything that we're given that is filtered through the state and what is going to benefit those who are ruling the state.
Yeah. Just to like quote Yeshua from a part of the Bible that I do like, he talks about, and I've also like read the Bible, y'all, like for real. Like I just fucking used to read the Bible for like fun and I thought it made me like a good person or whatever. But I'm glad to have this scholarly intel because he does say a house divided against itself cannot stand. And I feel like that teaching is in such opposition to what the state has done to scripture and the church, where now the church and the state are doing everything they can to not only divide us within ourselves, but each other apart so that we are arguing amongst ourselves and they're doing whatever the fuck they want. So Yeshua's real teachings was like, fuck with yourself, stand by yourself, like be about yourself, like don't fracture yourself against yourself, like choose to believe that you are whole and you're actually not born a sinner. I mean, it is like the exact opposite teachings of the church. And then from that place, like go out and do good through knowing yourself as whole, choosing to know that despite the programming of this world, which Jesus does talk about in his like real scriptures that are like undiluted, like don't be be in the world, but don't be of the world. Like be this whole vessel that you choose to see yourself as. Mary Magdalene is like, yes, you're fully human and fully divine, standing right next to him. And then see what kind of impact you can make in the world from that place. And this is why I like Megan Watterson's work, because the subtext of her book, Mary Magdalene Revealed, is a Christianity that we haven't tried yet. And I don't identify with religion or Christianity, but I do like that people are asking these questions and like in these inquiries. And I think she's one of the people who's really asked these questions from like a deeply compassionate, like intellectual, academic, but also spiritual and embodied place.
Well, and let's just say, like, I don't think it's a coincidence that someone like Russell Brand, who's accused of sexual assault, suddenly becomes Christian, or all of these conservative, or like once left-leaning, then turned conservative men become Christian because it is dehumanizing of women. It is dehumanizing of your relationship to women if you don't want to value a woman's thoughts and you want her to shut the fuck up all the time. And I think that when you have that structure embedded in the religion, then it's going to be embedded within the family and it's going to be embedded within the marriage. And therefore, that is the most like successful tool of programming is having, this dynamic within a marriage that the children see and then emulate. And then it's just this like cascading of silencing women who would threaten the state, who would threaten the status quo, who would threaten war. I mean, violence and war. I kind of keep going back to that. And again, acknowledging that there are those that support it. And I think the conversion to Christianity that's happening right now is like a death rattle or a reaction to a feminist movement. Like I believe we're kind of like in a fifth wave of feminism, um, where it's like the fear is just being exacerbated. The fear of like what are these bitches going to say? How is it going to impact me? And the fear that like the dismantling of the patriarchy isn't also for men, which is just again something that is short-sighted and incorrect, is like actively incorrect.
Yeah, the Bible talks and the church talks about this so much. I mean, I remember sitting with my ex-boyfriend in church, like just getting this sermon of like the man being the center of the home. He's the pillar of the home, he's the center of the home, he makes the rules in the home. I mean, this is like actually what they're teaching in church. Like this is not hyperbole. Like my like fucking 18-year-old body can like feel it in every fiber of my being. And I just feel myself sitting there like really trying to understand, really trying to do good. Like I did read The Bride Wore White. Like I did feel guilty that I was no longer a virgin because I was raped multiple times. And then my Christian ex, I mean, God bless his soul, like he was so abused as well by his parents and like he did not have an easy life. I've actually been thinking about reaching out to him recently just to be like, you good? How are you doing? Because like, I mean, and this is where my compassion to men is real. And y'all know I say all these things. I'm calling Ma, I step on the throats. And also like, I have so much compassion for like where his dad abused him, his mom was abusive, she was the one who hated me, and like he also just got sucked into this, and we were just like two teenagers, like so goopy, so gooey. Like he got me The Bride Wore White, I think, or my mom did. Regardless, he wanted me to read it, and like we were really trying to be this like Christian couple together. Like that is like a very real thing that I lived through, and like I do have, I think I said on well, actually, I'm not even going to say what I said on that other podcast because it's not our podcast and people will probably never find it. I've talked some shit about Christians, okay? And at the same time, because of the violence, because of how violent Christianity is. And at the same time, I have so much compassion to people who are being spiritually gaslit out of their sovereign connection with Source. And like truly, so many Christians are just seeking this connection that is their birthright, but they're being told they have to do all this like fuck shit that serves the state in order to connect to God. And that makes me sad. And it is also hard to like be a woman speaking about your story and what's happened to you. I feel like in the last week, I've started making like a new wave of videos about this abuser that I used to have. And then yesterday, I looked on Facebook just to see if we were still Facebook friends, and we are actively still Facebook friends. And my video shared in my Facebook, and I was kind of like, why haven't I just been like making these videos sooner? And then I was like, oh, because like it's so real that like you're scared that your perpetrator or the abuser who like got you or the ex-boyfriend or whoever is going to hear what you're saying, and then like the codes of like being burned at the stake or what's going to happen is so real. I think eventually you get to a, or at least this is what I'm experiencing, you get to a point in your process where you're just like, okay, fine, try to burn me. I'm just going to stand here in my truth. One last story from the Bible is Thecla, the Acts of Paul and Thecla. Thecla hears Paul talking about Christ outside of her window, and she's so obsessed. She sits there for 3 days and just listens to Paul talk about Christ, and she's obsessed. And so then she wants to get baptized, and Paul is like, you're dirty. And then she's like, fuck you, I'm gonna baptize myself. So then they take her to this like big arena, like all like the men in charge of the Roman Empire. They take her to this big arena and they're like, we're gonna fucking put you to death by lions, you bitch. Like, how dare you think you can baptize yourself and like know Christ without a man? Like, fuck you. So they send a lion to eat her. This is what like gives me goosebumps on my spine. She holds up a mudra. I mean, this could like literally make me sob. She holds up a mudra, like a fucking mudra of light, and the lion bows at her feet. Then and all of the women are like screaming. They're like, no, like let this woman baptize herself. Like she has the right to do this. Like imagine women screaming, this lion bows at her feet. Then they send in sea lions. And like the sea lions, she puts up both of her hands and they bow at her fucking feet. That's Thecla's story. That is like the real power of like the Christ light, the divine feminine, like Christos in Greek, I'm pretty sure means light. Like that's just the power of light, separate from Jesus, separate from Christ, separate from the church. Like you can just call on light and like the beasts will bow at your feet because the beasts also know source as source because they are also source.
Nice. I love that.
I love it too. Now I'm actively weeping, and now we have to go get interviewed by two Republican men, so we have to go.
Thanks for sharing.
Thanks for asking. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for listening, y'all. I will make sure I link the Discord, Patreon shit in the description, and
Hey,
I
links.
and I the show links. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Yeah, and the show links, and I will drop the resources. Also, I just want to say what I said at the end of the last podcast about like, don't just give us recommendations for where to come. You need to give us some money and help us and find us a producer and an agent. Like, I do really want us to have more money and a producer and an agent, so all of that is true. But actually, truly, please keep sending in your recommendations of where to go because it is helpful. And I am being facetious sometimes. So just now, I'm being a little bit of a cunt for fun for the comedy. And we love you and we're so grateful. And share this with your friends, rate, review, all the things, subscribe. Please subscribe on YouTube. We're trying to like up our algorithm on there. So please help us.
And we're grateful.
We are so grateful for you. Okay, I'm just coming back real quick because we just finished our podcast recording with the two men that I referred to as Republican conservatives, which they are, but we actually had a really powerful conversation with them for like an hour about spirituality and consciousness and embodiment and shamanism. And it really just feels like it speaks to the ethos of Gnarly Girls, which is like, don't judge a book by its cover. And we are here to be bridges in consciousness and connect with people who maybe we have different views from. And I don't know, at the end of the podcast, they were like, this is the most fun we've ever had on a podcast recording. And I think that we brought ourselves, AKA the medicine of us, into a space where maybe not a lot of women like us are getting airtime. I don't really know. I haven't actually listened to the podcast. So there I go, judging a book by its cover. But I do feel like I just wanted to come on and record this little addendum because I do feel like reaching across the table is medicine for these moments. And if you feel like you have this moment on the planet, And if you feel like you have the capacity and the consciousness and the heart to do that, I encourage you to do that and let people surprise you. Don't put yourself in a box. Don't let other people put you in a box, and don't put other people in a box. Because that's also what religion and church and Christianity and the state has done and wants to continue to do, is put people in boxes and reduce them into a smaller version of themselves when we're actually all multi-dimensional beings who are actually earth angels. We're fully human, we're fully divine, and here we are doing the damn thing. So thank you for listening, and we're sending you so much love. Bye.